It was 1 a.m. when I heard the knock, not the kind that waits, but the kind that trembles. When I opened the door, my daughter was there, blood tracing down her cheek, mascara melted into tears. I thought she came home to be safe. I didn't know she came home to collapse. It was 1 a.m. when the sound came. Not a knock, but something softer, desperate, uneven, like a hand forgetting how to ask for help. I sat up on the couch, the TV still murmuring low. For a second, I thought it was the wind against the porch. Then I heard it again. 3 small thuds, each weaker than the last. When I opened the door, the night leaned in, first cold, colorless, and silent. Then she appeared. My daughter, standing there barefoot, makeup streaked down her face, her hair tangled against the wind. Her coat was hanging off one shoulder, and there was blood along the edge of her lip, small but unmistakable. "Dad," she whispered like the word itself might break. I didn't ask anything. Instinct took over. I caught her before she fell forward, felt her weight collapse into my arms the way she used to when she was 5, when thunderstorms scared her. And she'd run to my room, trembling, asking if the world was ending. But tonight, the storm wasn't outside. It was in her. I carried her to the couch, laid her down, and saw the bruise forming beneath her right eye, dark, swelling, a color that shouldn't belong to any face I love. I grabbed a towel from the kitchen, ran it under warm water, and sat beside her. She flinched when I touched her cheek. "It's okay," I said softly. "You're home now." She didn't answer. She just looked at me as if words no longer worked. I saw shame there, and confusion, and something I hadn't seen in her eyes since she was little Fear. It took 10 minutes before she spoke again. He said I made him look stupid." "Who?" I asked, though I already knew. "Evan," she said, "your perfect son-in-law." Her voice cracked on the name, and she started to cry. Not the loud kind, but the kind that comes from somewhere deep. The kind you try to hide because even breathing hurts. I sat there staring at the floor. The air smelled faintly of her perfume, but it couldn't hide the sour trace of alcohol and adrenaline. She was still shaking. "What happened?" I asked quietly. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. "He found out I saw the messages, the ones from her." "Her," she nodded, "the mistress." The word barely left her lips. "He said she meant nothing, that it was my fault for looking, that I made him lose control." She swallowed hard, the way someone does when they've practiced the excuse for someone else's crime. I wanted to stand up, to grab my keys, to drive to that house, and put my fist through every lie he ever told her, but I didn't. Because when I looked at her bruised, exhausted, trembling, I realized rage would only give him a twin. So instead I said, "You're not going back there. Do you understand?" She stared at me, her eyes red but dry. "No, he said he'd take everything. Dad emptied the apartment, the car, even my job. He knows the boss. He said if I told anyone, he'd ruin me." I leaned close for to lower my voice. "He already has." That broke something in her. She covered her face, sobbing into her hands, repeating, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry." Sorry, as if she was the one who had to apologize for being hurt. I wanted to tell her none of this was her fault, but words felt useless in that moment. So I just stayed beside her, watching the clock tick toward 2 a.m. The room dim except for the lamp above us, the same one she used to study under when she lived here before marriage, before heartbreak. I thought of how she'd once told me, "He listens to me, Dad. You'll like him. He's calm." I'd believed her. I'd even shaken his hand and said, "Take care of her." And he did, until the night he decided not to. Now she lay on my couch, eyes half closed, whispering the same name over and over like a curse she couldn't wake from. When she finally drifted into sleep, I pulled the blanket up to her shoulders and sat there in the silence. Outside, the wind moved the trees like slow breathing. Inside, I could still feel her heartbeat against my sleeve from when I caught her. That's when I noticed the bruise on her wrist. Faint fingerprints red in the lamplight. My throat went dry. It wasn't one fight, it wasn't one night. It had been happening, and I hadn't seen it. I turned off the lamp and sat there in the dark, listening to her breathing steady again. Every sound in the house suddenly meant something new. The fridge. Hum, the floor creak. Even the ticking clock. All reminders that somewhere between her vows and this night, I'd lost the chance to protect her. I looked toward the window, the reflection of the porch light flickering faintly. It used to be the light she'd follow home after late school nights. Tonight, it looked like a warning flare I'd missed too many times. And for the first time in years, I prayed not for her husband to pay, not for justice, not even for peace. I prayed for morning just to make sure she'd still be here when it came. Morning did not arrive the way I hoped. It didn't cleanse the house or make anything right. It came in thin gray light that crawled across the floorboards and landed on the same bruises the night left behind. My daughter was still asleep on the couch, her hair half covering her face, one hand curled around the blanket like she was holding into a promise that might disappear if she let go. I stood in the kitchen, coffee untouched, staring at the phone. The urge to call someone, anyone pressed in. Emma, my wife, was upstairs. She didn't know yet. She thought our daughter was at her own home, married happy. I'd let her believe that, because believing is easier than seeing. The floor creaked softly. Emma appeared at the stairway, in her robe, rubbing her eyes. "John," she whispered, "why are you up this early?" I didn't answer. Her gaze followed mine to the living room. She froze. The cup in her hand almost slipped. "Oh my God," she breathed. She crossed the room in seconds, knelt beside the couch, brushed a strand of hair from our daughter's forehead. What happened to her? Her voice cracked on the word her. I said the truth as simply as I could. Evan hit her. Emma looked at me, waiting for the no. That can't be true, that every mother wants to hear. But I didn't give it. I just stood there. And that silence told her everything. Her lips trembled since when? I don't know, maybe for a while. She covered her mouth. We had dinner with him last month, John. He brought her flowers. He joked with you about work. Monsters don't wear masks, I said quietly. They wear manners. For a long time we just stood there, the three of us, one asleep, one breaking, one trying not to. Then Emma whispered, "We have to take her to the hospital." I know, I said, but when she wakes up, I don't want her to think we're deciding for her again. Emma nodded, though her eyes stayed on the bruise. She used to tell me he never raised his voice, she said almost to herself. That's what makes it worse, I murmured. The quiet ones don't yell, they calculate. The coffee turned cold. The morning turned longer. I sat on the armchair across from the couch, watching my daughter breathe, remembering the day I walked her down the aisle. Evan's hand had been firm, steady, confident, the kind of grip that fools fathers. I'd looked at him then and thought, he'll protect her. Now that memory tasted like rust. Around 10, she woke. Her eyes darted to Emma, then to me. For a second, she looked disoriented, then ashamed. I should go, she whispered. Go where? Emma asked. Home. This is home, I said. She shook her head. He'll be angry if I don't. I cut her off gently. He already is. And that's not your fault. She stared at me, confused by a sentence she'd forgotten she deserved to hear. Emma sat beside her. Sweetheart, we're going to the hospital, just to check. No hospitals, she said quickly. He'll find out. He knows people there. I looked at her, really looked, the trembling jaw, the shrinking shoulders. She wasn't the woman who'd left our house a year ago. She was a smaller version of herself, carved down by fear. I exhaled. Okay, I said, then we'll go to the police. Her eyes widened. Dad, please, don't. Why not? Because it'll make it worse. You don't know him. I almost laughed, but there was nothing funny in it. That's the thing, kiddo. I think I finally do. She started crying again, quietly this time. Emma reached for her hand, and I felt the room closing in the three people caught between silence and the truth. I stood up and went outside. The air was cold, sharp, the kind that forces your lungs to remember you're alive. I stared down the street at the neat rows of houses pretending to hold perfect lives. Somewhere down that road, my son-in-law was probably making coffee to looking into a mirror that hadn't yet learned to show him what he really was. My hands clenched. For years I'd told myself violence was something other families faced. We raised daughters to forgive and sons to defend. But no one teaches fathers what to do when forgiveness becomes survival. Behind me, I heard the door open. Emma stepped out. You're thinking of going there, aren't you? I didn't lie. Yes. And then what? Hit him back. No, I said. That'd make us the same. I looked at her. But I need to see him. I need him to know I know. She hesitated. John, please don't do anything stupid. I half smiled, though nothing inside me felt calm. After tonight, I don't think stupidity is what I'm afraid of anymore. When I walked back inside, My daughter was sitting up, holding her phone. There were new messages, a stream of them all, from him. The last one made my stomach turn. You'll regret making me look bad. I took the phone gently from her hand, read the words again, and felt something old stir in me. Not rage, not revenge, but the cold precision of a father who's done being polite. I turned the phone off and set it on the table. You rest, I told her. I'll handle this. She grabbed my wrist. Dad, please, don't. I nodded, but I didn't promise. Outside, the morning light sharpened, cutting through the window like a blade. Somewhere between fear and resolve, I made a choice, the kind that doesn't wait for justice, only for courage. By noon, the house felt smaller. Every sound seemed to echo the clock ticking. The kettle boiling, the soft shuffle of Emma peeing in the kitchen. My daughter stayed silent, curled under the same blanket. I hadn't said a word since the morning, but the silence between us had its own voice. It was saying, do something. So I did. I took my coat, the one I used to wear to work before retirement, still smelling faintly of coffee and rain. Emma watched me from the kitchen doorway. You're really going? She asked. I'm just going to talk, I said. She nodded, but her eyes said she didn't believe me. When I stepped outside, the air had shifted. The sky was pale, like it hadn't decided whether to rain or forgive. I got in the car, turned the key, and stared at the reflection in the rearview mirror. Gray beard, tired eyes, jaw too tight. A man pretending he had a plan. Evan's house was 15 minutes away. I'd been there dozens of times, birthdays, holidays, Sunday lunches where we smiled across the table like two men who understood each other. The last time I visited, he'd poured me whiskey and said, "You raised a strong daughter, sir." I'd thanked him. I didn't know strength was what he'd try to break. When I reached the driveway, his car was still there, that black Mercedes. He loved more than sincerity. The curtains were half closed, but a shadow moved behind them. I knocked once, twice, then he opened the door. He looked different, less polished, more human. His eyes were bloodshot, like he hadn't slept. And he had that half-defensive stance men wear when they know something's coming. "Mr. Miller," he said, forcing a smile. "Didn't expect to see you." "Didn't expect to," I replied, "but here I am." He stepped aside. "Come in." I walked in. The house smelled of cologne and disinfectant, the kind of clean that hides chaos. There was a lipstick stained glass on the counter, not my daughter's the shade. I turned to him. "She came home last night," I said quietly. "At 1 a.m. He froze, his smile fading. Yeah, we had a fight." "A fight?" I repeated. "That what you call it?" She pushed me," he stammered. "You don't know how she gets when she's angry." I took a step closer. "I know exactly how she gets. I raised her. She cries when she's angry. She doesn't hit. You do." He swallowed hard. "Look, it was a mistake. It got out of hand. It won't happen again." I let out a quiet laugh, not because it was funny, but because the words sounded rehearsed, borrowed from every coward who ever wanted forgiveness without change. "Do you know what she looked like when she showed up at my door?" I asked. Barefoot, bleeding, terrified. That's not a mistake, Evan. That's a pattern. He ran a hand through his hair. You don't understand. She read messages that weren't meant for her. From your mistress, I interrupted. His jaw tightened. That's personal. So is my daughter's face, I said. The room went quiet. The clock above the fireplace ticked twice before he spoke again. I love her, he muttered. I stared at him. Love isn't what you do when you're sober and angry. It's what you don't do. And last night, you showed me exactly how much you don't. He looked away. For a second, I saw something flicker behind his expression. Not guilt, not regret, just calculation. The kind of look men wear when they're already rewriting the story in their heads. I'll talk to her, he said. We'll fix it. We just need space. I stepped closer until we were almost eye to eye. You don't get to talk to her. Not until I say so. You'll give her that space, and you'll pray. It's all she asks for. Are you threatening me? He asked, trying to sound bold, but his voice betrayed a tremor. No, I said. Threats come from anger. This comes from clarity. For a moment, neither of us moved. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator, cold, constant, mechanical. Then I turned toward the door. Before leaving, I glanced at the photo on the wall, their wedding picture. My daughter's smile frozen his hand on her waist. I wondered how long before that touch became something else. At the doorway, he said, You can't keep her from me forever. I looked back. Forever's not what I'm aiming for. Just long enough for her to remember who she was before you convinced her she wasn't enough. He didn't answer. When I stepped outside, I realized my hands were shaking, not from rage, but from restraint. There's a kind of exhaustion that comes from holding in the fire instead of letting it burn everything. I got back into the car and sat there. For a long time, I didn't drive. I just stared at his house, the blinds, the front door, the window upstairs that still had my daughter's plants on the sill. And I thought about how easily people build homes over secrets. Then I started the engine and whispered to no one. If he touches her again, I won't come to talk next time. The wind carried the words somewhere between prayer and promise. When I got back, the house was too quiet. It was the kind of silence that doesn't wait for you. It judges you. The clock on the wall read 2:30, the same hour she used to call on Sundays just to ask how my tomatoes were doing. Now the phone was on the table, her bag still beside the couch, but she was gone. At first, I told myself she might be upstairs or in the yard getting air. I walked through every room like a man chasing ghosts. Bedroom empty. Bathroom towel still damp from this morning. Front porch, nothing but wind brushing the chimes. Then I saw a folded piece of paper on the kitchen counter held down by her coffee mug. I didn't want to open it. I already knew what kind of letter it was. The paper always weighs more when the words inside are an apology. I unfolded it anyway. Dad, please don't come after me. I just need to fix this my way. He promised he'd change if I came home. Tell Mom I love her. The handwriting trembled across the page. Half the letters slanted downhill, like even the ink was too tired to stand. For a second, I couldn't breathe. My first thought wasn't anger, it was failure. I'd been in his house less than an hour ago looking that man in the eye. And somehow, she was walking back into the same fire I'd tried to drag her out of. Emma came down the stairs behind me. John, I turned the paper around. Her face went pale. She read it twice before she spoke. She went back. The words hit the air like stones dropped into water. She thinks she can save him, I said quietly. Emma shook her head. No, she thinks she can save the version of him she married. That man doesn't exist anymore. We stood there for a long time. Then Emma whispered, we should call the police. They'll tell us to wait 24 hours, I said. And by then, I didn't finish. I grabbed my keys again. This time, Emma didn't stop me. She just said, John, don't let rage be the thing she remembers about you. I'm not angry, I said, though. I could feel it rising like heat under my skin. I'm terrified. Outside clouds were stacking over the horizon, thick and bruised. I drove without thinking, the same 15 minutes again, but the road felt longer, like the world was stretching itself to see how much I'd endure. When I reached their street, her car was already there, parked crooked in the driveway, engine still ticking. The front door stood open. I ran inside. The living room looked untouched. Too untouched. His glass of whiskey on the table, her purse on the floor. And then I heard it, muffled crying coming from upstairs. I climbed each step, heavier than the last. The door to their bedroom was half closed. I pushed it open. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, shoulders shaking, hands in her lap. Evan stood a few feet away, pacing, phone in hand. When he saw me, his face twisted. You can't just walk in here. I just did. He took a step forward. This is between me and my wife. No, I said. It stopped being between you two the moment she showed up at my door bleeding. He opened his mouth to argue, but my daughter's voice broke through. Stop, please. Her tone wasn't fear. It was exhaustion. The kind that comes after you've defended someone for too long. Evan pointed at me. He's trying to turn you against me. She came to me, I said. I didn't take her. He laughed bitterly. You think you're some hero, old man? I took a breath. No. Just a father who remembers what promises sound like before they're broken. He threw the phone onto the bed. You don't get it. She provokes me. I moved closer. And you hit at her because that makes you what, the man of the house? He didn't answer. His jaw worked like he was chewing on pride too tough to swallow. Behind him, my daughter stood slowly. Her eyes met mine, wet but steady. Dad, she said, please go. I'll come home tonight. I looked at her face, the bruise darkening the apology, forming again on her lips, and I knew she was still trapped inside a circle she couldn't see. So I said softly, then I'll wait outside. I turned to Evan. You've got 1 hour. After that, I'm not knocking again.
I walked out before he could reply.
down the stairs, out the door, into the heavy air that smell and regret. I stood by her car, watching the window upstairs. Minutes passed, then thunder. The sky split open and rain poured, washing dust off everything except the things that mattered. I waited. Half an hour. 40 minutes. Every second felt like holding my breath underwater. Then finally, the door opened. She stepped out, clutching a small suitcase soaked through but free. When she reached me, she didn't speak. She just fell into my arms again, the same way she had the night before. And I realized something I should have known all along. Sometimes love isn't about forgiving someone who breaks you. It's about finding the courage to stop letting them try. The motel was small and quiet, tucked behind a gas station that had been closed for years. A single flickering sign read vacancy, though it felt less like an invitation and more like a warning. The owner didn't ask questions, just handed me a key, room 7, and looked at my daughter the way people look at someone who's been running too long. Inside, the air smelled faintly of bleach and old cigarettes. The curtains were drawn halfway, letting in a strip of light that divided the room into two colors: safety and memory. She sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the carpet, her hands folded like a confession she couldn't finish. I placed a bottle of water beside her. "Drink," I said softly. "You haven't had anything since morning." She took it, nodded, then whispered, "I didn't think you'd come back for me." I sat down across from her. That's the thing about fathers. Even when we're too late, we still try to arrive. She smiled weakly, but it vanished as quickly as it came. Her eyes moved to her phone, lying on the nightstand, the screen cracked, still buzzing from messages she hadn't read. I picked it up. "Do you want me to turn it off?" She hesitated. "You can look," she said quietly. "I don't want to keep secrets anymore." There were messages too many. His name over and over again, alternating between apologies and accusations. But one stood out from an unknown number, sent just before midnight. He said you wouldn't find out about me, but I'm done lying for him. No name, no photo, just words that smelled of panic. I looked up. "Do you know who this is?" She shook her head. "Maybe. One of them." Her voice cracked on the last word. "I used to think there was only one Mistress. But last week he got paranoid, said someone was threatening him. Said she wanted money." My stomach tightened. "Blackmail." She nodded. "He said she had photos. Proof." I didn't believe him until last night. I leaned back, staring at the phone, trying to fit the pieces. The Mistress wasn't just a betrayal, she was a threat. And that meant the violence wasn't only personal. It was protective, desperate. "Did you tell the police?" I asked. She laughed bitterly. "Dad, the police don't care about people like him. He has friends in the department. He told me once, I don't lose arguments, I buy them." I felt the kind of anger that burns without noise, the slow tightening kind, that doesn't want to explode, only to exist. I walked to the window and looked out. Rain had started again, softer this time, tracing lines down the glass. Behind us, a truck passed on the highway, headlights flashing through for Half a second, long enough to remind me that the world kept moving, even when ours had stopped. "Do you want to go home?" I asked. She didn't answer. I turned around. Home as in our home, not his. She nodded slowly. "Maybe for a few days. Longer, if you need," I said. She finally looked at me. "What if he comes for me?" I walked over, placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then he'll meet a version of me I've spent years keeping buried." For the first time since last night, she laughed, small, fragile, but real. "Mom always said you were the calm one."
I was.
I said. Until someone gave me a reason not to be. She leaned her head against my arm, and for a few quiet seconds there was peace. Not the kind that fixes anything, just the kind that lets you breathe before the next storm. When she fell asleep, I checked her phone again, scrolling through the older messages. Most were empty, but one image was still loading, a photo of Evan standing in a hotel hallway, hand in hand with a woman I didn't recognize. Her face was half hidden, but what caught my eye wasn't her. It was the reflection behind them in the mirror. Someone else was there holding the phone. Whoever took that picture wasn't a lover, it was a witness. I saved the image, turned off the phone, and sat in the dark. The rain eased, and the sound of her breathing steadied beside me. I looked at her, my little girl, who while once used to chase fireflies, now hiding from a man who promised forever. I thought of what Emma would say if she knew we were here in this cheap room, running from something we couldn't name yet. She'd tell me to wait, to be patient, to trust the law. But fathers like me don't wait. We endure. Outside, the neon vacancy sign flickered again, light, dark light, like a warning written in Morse code. And I understood it clearly. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. By the next morning, the motel room felt smaller, like the walls had been listening all night. My daughter was still asleep, her phone face down beside her. I'd barely closed my eyes. Every time I tried that photo, came back Evan, in the hallway, the woman beside him, and the blurred reflection behind them, someone holding the phone. There's a strange thing about truth. When you finally see its outline, sleep becomes impossible. I left her a note on the nightstand. "I'm going out for a bit." Locked the door. Then I stepped out into the morning light. The air smelled of rain and asphalt. I stopped by a diner down the road, ordered coffee I didn't drink, and stared at the photo again. The hallway number 214 was visible on the door. A hotel, clearly. But which one? Then I noticed something small. A brass plaque on the wall beside them. The Willow Suites. I knew that name. Evan had mentioned it once, saying he hosted a business dinner there every month. I remembered the way he said it too casually, like someone mentioning a place they'd memorized too well. I finished my coffee, left a few bills on the counter, and drove toward downtown. The Willow Suites was exactly what I expected, clean enough to impress, cold enough to forget. I walked into the lobby like I belonged there. Years of business meetings had taught me one truth. Confidence opens doors faster than money. The clerk smiled, politely. "Good morning, sir." Checking in. Actually, I said I'm supposed to meet my son-in-law here. He said he left something for me last night, room 214. She checked her computer. 214. Yes, Mr. Evans checked in yesterday afternoon and left early this morning. My stomach tightened. He checked out already. Yes. Left a key envelope for someone named J.M. That you? I nodded. That's me. She handed me the envelope. Inside was a folded receipt, 1 room, 1 night, 2 guests. I almost didn't look at the signature, but I did. It wasn't Evans. It was hers. My daughter's name. For a moment, I couldn't move. My first instinct was denial. Maybe he'd forged it. But then I remembered the way she looked last night, the exhaustion, the guilt. Maybe she'd come here trying to confront him. Maybe that's where the photo was taken. The clerk tilted her head. "Everything okay, sir?" I forced a smile. "Yes, thank you." I walked back to the car, the paper trembling in my hand. On the back of the receipt, in faint pen marks, someone had written a phone number. No name, no message, just 10 digits. I dialed it. The line clicked after 2 rings. A woman's voice answered, low, wary. "Who is this?" "My name's John Miller," I said. "I think you know my son-in-law, Evan." Silence. "Then how did you get this number?" "I found it on a hotel receipt. I'm not here to threaten you. I just want to understand what's happening." Another pause, then a shaky breath. "He told me you'd call." That stopped me cold. What? He said if anything happened, you'd come looking. That you'd find me before the police did.
Where are you?
I can't say. But you need to listen, Mr. Miller. He's not who you think he is. This isn't just about me or your daughter. There's money, a lot of it, and he's in deep. I gripped the steering wheel. What kind of money? She hesitated. Blackmail. He's been paying to keep something buried. I thought it was an affair. It's not. It's worse. Tell me what you mean. I can't over the phone. There's a diner off Route 9, the Silver Finch. Meet me there at 3. I'll bring proof. Then the line went dead. I sat there, the hum of the car engine filling the silence. Outside people walked past like life was normal, like none of them had ever opened a door at 1 a.m. to find everything they believed in bleeding on their porch. I looked at the receipt again. Her signature, the room number, the number scrawled in panic. It was all part of something bigger than a broken marriage, When I got back to the motel, my daughter was awake, sitting by the window, sunlight on her face. She looked better, but her eyes still carried that deep, tired sadness of someone learning to exist after the illusion dies. "You went out," she said quietly. "I needed air." I lied. She nodded. "Did you find anything?" I hesitated, then sat beside her. Just questions. She stared at the horizon. "He texted me again. Said he wants to meet tonight. He sounds scared." "Then don't go," I said. "I won't," she whispered. "Not without you." Her words landed heavier than she knew. Because whether she realized it or not, I was already planning to meet someone else that afternoon. someone who claimed to have proof that could burn everything down. I looked at the clock on the nightstand. 2:15. 45 minutes until the meeting. I grabbed my coat. "Try to rest," I said. She frowned. "Where are you going?" I paused at the door. To see if fear tells the truth. When I stepped outside, the world had gone bright again. Too bright for what I was carrying. The kind of light that exposes everything. Lies, guilt, and the reflection of a man who was about to find out what kind of father he really was. The Silver Finch sat off Route 9, wedged between an auto shop and an empty field. Its sign had lost 2 letters, so from the road, it just read Silv Fee. The parking lot was nearly empty, except for a rusted pickup and a blue sedan with tinted windows. I parked near the exit, facing the road. Old habits from a younger, warier version of myself. Inside, the air smelled of coffee that had been reheated too many times. A waitress behind the counter gave me a nod but didn't ask what I wanted. I found a booth in the corner where the blinds threw thin lines of light across the table like a cage made of sunlight. At exactly 3, she walked in. The woman from the photo. I recognized the outline before I saw her face. Dark hair tied back, sunglasses too big for a cloudy day, and the cautious way she looked around before sitting down. "Mr. Miller," she asked. I nodded. She took off the glasses. Her eyes were tired red at the corners. "I wasn't sure you'd come." "You said you had proof." "I do." She pulled out her phone, scrolled, and slid it across the table. On the screen, photos, dozens of them. Evan in hotel rooms, at bars, handing off envelopes, meeting people who didn't look like lovers. They looked like dealers. "He's not just cheating," she said. "He's laundering money through real estate charities, whatever he can." I was his accountant. Until I wasn't. I frowned. "Accountant." She nodded. "He hired me 2 years ago. Said he needed someone discreet. I thought it was just for business expansion, but then I saw the transactions, offshore account shell companies. He was moving money that didn't belong to him. When I confronted him, he threatened me." "Why tell me?" "Because your daughter's in danger," she said, voice trembling. "He's been using her name on some of the documents. As a silent partner. If this blows up, it'll look like she's part of it." My chest tightened. "He forged her signature." "Some. Others he tricked her into signing. Routine papers," he said. "Contracts for their home, their accounts." She never read them. I leaned back, trying to breathe. The image of my daughter's handwriting on that hotel receipt flashed in my mind. The slanted letters, the downward slope. Maybe that hadn't been her first time signing something she didn't understand. "He's meeting someone tonight," the woman continued. "A man named Dalka, Romanian ex-banker. They've been transferring funds. I overheard him saying he's going to clean everything before it reaches the press." "Where?" "The old Harbor Pier 7, midnight." I stared at her. "You want me to go there?" "No," she said quickly. You should tell the police. And what happens before they get there, I asked. You think men like Evan leave witnesses alive? She looked away. I just wanted to warn you. Then why risk meeting me? She hesitated, eyes glassy. Because I couldn't live with another bruise on someone else's face. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Outside, a truck roared past, rattling the windows. I slid her phone back. Send me everything you have. Every file, every name. She nodded. Be careful, Mr. Miller. He's smart. He knows how to make people disappear without leaving blood. I almost laughed. He's never met a man who's already learned how to live with ghosts. When I left, the sky had turned the color of wet steel. The wind carried the faint smell of salt from the harbor, even miles away. I sat in the car, listening to the rain starting again softer, this time like the world was trying to wash itself before the night came. I thought about calling the police, but something in me didn't trust that route anymore. Men like Evan didn't just have money, they had access. They turned justice into a waiting room where truth died of boredom. So I called Emma instead. She answered on the second ring. John, where are you? Out, I said. Is she safe? For now. What's going on? I hesitated. I think it's bigger than we thought. Bigger? How? Up above. Enough to bury her name if we don't stop it tonight. John, she said softly, don't do anything you can't undo. I closed my eyes. That's the thing, Em. He already did. Before she could answer, I ended the call. The rain thickened, streaking down the windshield. I drove toward the coast, headlights slicing through the gray. The road narrowed, and the smell of the ocean grew stronger, cold, metallic, restless. By the time I reached the edge of the pier, the sun had gone down completely. The water below was black glass, and the air carried the sound of chains knocking against masts. I parked near a rusted container and sat there listening, waiting. At midnight, a car pulled up. Sleek black, the kind of car that looked allergic to dust. Evan stepped out. He was on the phone, pacing agitated. Then another car arrived. A man in a dark coat emerged, tall, foreign accent when he spoke. They shook hands. I rolled the window down slightly. The wind carried fragments of their voices. Too risky. She knows. Then we fix it tonight. My pulse steadied. Not from fear, from purpose. Because now I wasn't just a father. I was a witness. The wind off of the harbor bit through my coat as I stepped from the car. It smelled of iron and diesel, the kind of air that clings to you. A freight ship's horn moaned somewhere out in the dark. Gulls cried like warning bells. Ahead, at the far end of the pier, two silhouettes moved in the sodium haze, Evan and the man she'd called Dalka. I kept to the shadows, boots echoing soft against the wet boards. Their voices carried over the waves. You said it was handled, Dalka hissed. It is, Evan snapped. The old man doesn't know anything. He just came to scare me. I almost smiled at the irony. Dalka shook his head. Then why did you bring her into this? Using her name was stupid. The transfer's traceable. She's my wife, Evan said. They'll never question her signature. Until they do, Dalka said flatly. A wave slapped against the pylons, spraying salt mist. I stepped closer, hidden behind a shipping crate, heart steady, mind clear. I wasn't here to be a hero. I was here to understand what kind of hell my daughter had been living inside. Evan ran a hand through his hair. Look, I'll fix it. I'll move the funds again. Dalka cut him off. No, you'll pay what you owe, or I'll clean it my way. Evan's jaw clenched. You threaten me? Dalka pulled something from his coat pocket, a flash drive. Everything's on here. Every transaction. Every forged name, including hers. Evan lunged forward. Give me that. The struggle was brief, shoulder against shoulder curses. A clatter as the drive fell between the planks. Dalka shoved him back hard. You're finished, boy. That's when I stepped out. Not yet. They both froze. The light caught my face, and I saw Evan's expression shift from rage to disbelief. John, what the hell are you doing here? Cleaning up. What you started, I said. Dalka glanced between us. You know him, my father-in-law, Evan muttered. He thinks he can play judge. Not judge, I said quietly. Just a witness who's done watching. Dalka's eyes narrowed. You want this? He held up the flash drive, its metal glinting in the rain. Proof your daughter's innocent. Proof he's not. Evan stepped toward me. Don't listen to him. He's lying. Stop, I said. Every lie you've told has her blood on it. I saw her face. I saw what you did. She pushed me, he shouted, voice cracking. No, I said. She reached for you, and you hit the only thing that still believed you could be better. The words hung between us louder than the storm. Dalka tossed the drive onto the dock. Decide who you are, old man. You take that, you ruin him. You leave it, and he ruins you. He turned and walked away, disappearing into the fog. The sound of his boots faded, until only the sea remained. Evan looked at me, breathing hard. You don't get it, John. I was trying to protect us. The money was meant to fix things. You don't fix love with greed, I said. You bury it. He took a step closer. You think you're righteous? You think standing here makes you any better? You left her once already. When she married me, you gave up your right to protect her. That cut deeper than I expected. You're right, I said. I did let her go, because I thought she was safe. But last night she came back to me broken. And that makes her my responsibility again. He laughed bitter. What are you gonna do? Hit me, turn me in. I knelt, picked up the flash drive from the wetboards, and stood. Neither, I said. I'm going to end the story before you write another lie into it. For a moment the storm paused. The world held its breath. Then he lunged. His shoulder slammed into mine, sending both of us toward the edge. I gripped the railing as he tried to snatch the drive. We struggled, feet slipping on the slick wood, the sea roaring below. Let go, he shouted. Not until you stop lying, I said, through clenched teeth. He swung once wild and desperate. I ducked, and his momentum carried him forward. He stumbled against the railing, one foot whipping through the gap. For a heartbeat, I caught his arm. His eyes met mine, pleading, furious, terrified. John, he gasped. Help me. Rain ran down our faces like tears. I tightened my grip, every muscle screaming. For one terrible second, I saw my daughter's face instead of his. The same eyes, the same fear. Then I pulled him back. He collapsed onto the dock, coughing, shaking. I stood over him, chest heaving. "This ends tonight," I said. He looked up at me, hatred burning through his fear. "You think you won?" "No," I said, but I didn't lose myself trying. I turned and walked away, the flash drive cold in my hand. Behind me, he shouted something drowned by thunder. I didn't look back. When I reached the car, I sat behind the wheel, staring at the small metal device resting on my palm. Inside it was everything: his lies, her freedom, and the truth I had been chasing since 1 a.m. I whispered into the rain, "Let justice be louder than revenge." And for the first time that night, the storm began to break. When I reached home, dawn was still hours away. The world outside was rinsed clean, but my hands weren't. I held the flash drive the way a priest might hold a confession, knowing it could save or destroy. Emma was waiting at the kitchen table, a mug between her palms, untouched. She looked up as I walked in. Her eyes found the wet streaks on my coat before they found my face. "You found him," she said softly. "I found enough," I replied. I set the flash drive on the table. She stared at it as if it were ticking. "What's on it?" "Proof. Transactions, names, forged signatures, all of it. Enough to clear her. And Evan." I sat down across from her. "He's still breathing." Her shoulders sank with a sigh, relief mixed with disappointment. "John," she whispered, "you should take that to the police." "I will." But I didn't move. The clock ticked toward 5, and the house filled with that fragile silence that only comes before morning, when everything broken hides behind the illusion of peace. From the living room, a phone began to buzz. Emma frowned. "Is that yours?" "No," I said, standing. "It's hers." I walked over and saw my daughter's phone lighting up. On the couch, a single voicemail notification glowing at the top. Known number. Timestamp 12:58 a.m. Minutes after I'd left the pier. I hit play. Static. Then Evan's voice, low, ragged. "John, I know you have it. You were right about everything. I can't run anymore, but neither can you. They'll come for all of us if that drive gets out. You think you've won, but you've just walked into the middle of it." Then silence. A faint splash in the background, and the sound of waves. The message ended. Emma stared at me. "What does that mean?" I didn't answer. I replayed the last second, the splash, and realized it wasn't the sea hitting the pier. It was something heavier. I grabbed my coat again. "John," Emma said sharply, "you're not going back. I have to know." "Know what?" "If the tide carried him away, or if he's still out there writing the ending for me." She stood blocking the door. "Don't do this. Let it end." I looked at her, the woman who'd stood by me through 30 years of calm and chaos, and said, "You don't end storms by pretending they've passed." Her eyes glistened, but she stepped aside. The harbor was different in daylight, emptier, almost peaceful. The police tape fluttered at the far end, where a patrol car idled. 2 officers stood by the railing, one riding the other, looking down at the water. I walked closer until one of them raised a hand. "Sir, this area's restricted." "I know," I said. "You found something." He eyed me cautious. "Who are you?" "The man who left last night before the storm broke." Recognition flickered in his expression. "You need to talk to Detective Cole. He'll want a statement." "What did you find?" I asked again. The younger officer hesitated. Then quietly, an empty car. Black Mercedes. Keys still inside. No body. I looked out over the water. The tide moved slow, dragging sunlight across its surface. Nothing else. I turned away, the flash drive heavy in my pocket. Behind me, the detective called out, "Mr. Miller, if you know something, this is your chance." I didn't stop walking, because I did know something. Not about the money, not about the lies, but about men like Evan. They don't drown, they wait. At home, I found my daughter awake, sitting by the window. Her eyes were red but calm. "Where were you?" she asked. "I saw." "Finishing what he started," I said. She nodded slowly. "Did you?" "No," I said. "The sea keeps its secrets." She didn't ask more. She just looked outside at the pale morning light and whispered, "I don't want to hate him anymore." I sat beside her. "Then don't. Hate is just love that ran out of ways to be kind." She leaned on my shoulder the way she used to when she was small. "What'll happen to him?" I looked at the flash drive in my hand. "That depends on whether truth sinks or floats." Outside, a gull streamed above the water, and for a moment I imagined it carrying his voice. That final message twisted in the wind, warning me that the story wasn't over. But maybe it didn't need to be. Maybe some stories weren't meant to end with answers, only with silence that finally feels earned. I slipped the flash drive into an envelope and wrote 2 words on it for her. Then I placed it on the table beside the phone and walked out to the porch. The sun was rising slow, uncertain, like a man learning how to start over. And somewhere out there, beneath that same light, the sea was keeping one more secret I wasn't sure I wanted back. Morning stretched slowly across the bay, painting the water in pale gold. I sat on the porch, the coffee cooling in my hand, watching the light crawl over the fence, the same fence she used to paint when she was 16, humming songs she never finished. The world was awake again, but inside, it felt like everything had gone quiet for good. Emma was in the kitchen talking softly on the phone, police probably. My daughter was upstairs sleeping, or trying to. And me, I was somewhere between justice and peace, knowing I could never really hold both. People talk about closure like it's a destination, but it's not. It's just the place where your anger finally gets tired of standing. I thought about that night at the pier. The way the wind howled, the way he looked at me when I pulled him back. I could have let him go. Maybe a part of me wanted to. But mercy isn't weakness. It's the punishment we give to ourselves instead of others. They'll find him eventually, or maybe they won't. Maybe the ocean will keep its secret, swallowing the last version of him that still had something human left. Either way, I'm done searching for him. Some truths only grow darker when dragged into the light. The flash drive was gone this morning. I didn't ask who took it. Maybe Emma turned it in. Maybe my daughter did. Maybe it doesn't matter. Sometimes the proof isn't what saves you, it's what frees you to stop needing it. The porch creaked as I leaned forward. Across the street, the neighbor's kid was learning to ride a bike, wobbling, falling, crying, getting back up again. His father cheered from the sidewalk, hands ready, but never reaching unless he had to. I used to be that father once. I thought protection meant holding on. Now I know it means letting go before the world teaches them how to fall the hard way. When my daughter wakes, she'll ask me what happens next. I'll tell her the truth that next isn't something you wait for. It's something you choose, one quiet morning at a time. She'll heal not all at once, but in fragments, the way glass still catches light after it's broken. As for me, I'll keep sitting here listening to the tide come and go, learning to forgive a version of myself that couldn't save her sooner. That's the hardest forgiveness there is, not for others, but for the man who hesitated while the storm was still far away. Maybe one day she'll forgive him too. The man who hurt her. Maybe not. Forgiveness isn't justice. It's just a way to stop letting pain rent space inside your peace. A car passed down the street, its tires hissing against the wet asphalt. For a moment, the sound reminded me of waves of that last voicemail echoing through static. You think you've won, but you've just walked into the middle of it. Maybe he was right. Maybe there's no winning in this kind of story, just surviving long enough to tell it without shaking. I took one last sip of cold coffee and set the mug down. The sunlight had reached the porch steps, now warm and indifferent. I closed my eyes and let it touch my face. In the end, truth doesn't always roar. Sometimes it whispers through the silence, after shouting through the breath you finally take when the worst is over. If anyone asks what became of Evan, I'll tell them nothing. Because nothing is what he finally became. And nothing is what I'll carry forward. Not the raid, not the guilt, not the endless need to make sense of it all. Just the lesson he left behind. That mercy isn't a gift for the ones who deserve it. It's what remains when the truth is too heavy to carry.